What's up, stream? What's up? So for today, we're gonna start off watching a YouTube video. Why is Nintendo trying to kill Melee? Is the name of this one. I have personally not seen this one before, so it's gonna be interesting to see if it's any new info in this one. But yeah, let's get started.
It's 2020 and Nintendo is once again trying to kill Melee. By sending a cease and desist letter to one of the biggest tournaments of the year, Nintendo is presenting a massive threat to the future of their biggest esport.
Yeah, dude. Same.
Alright,
Different
before
day.
we get into the video, I want to make sure that you know that if you have a great idea for a new episode of Don't At Me or any series on our channel, you can send us that idea at tips@thescore.com. And we also want you to know that we're on our way to 2 million subscribers. So if you haven't subbed to the channel, please do it already. What are you waiting for? Okay,
2 million?
last week,
Pog.
the Big House, a major Super Smash Bros. Melee and Ultimate tournament, was forced to cancel their online event because of a cease and desist letter from Nintendo. You might recognize Nintendo from being the publisher of Super Smash Bros. According to Robin Harn, one of the organizers of the Big House, Nintendo ordered him to cancel the event because they were planning on using Slippy, a fan mod for Melee that gives a game from 2001 better netcode than most fighting games that came out in the last 5 years.
October 29th, I think, is the first conversation I had with a Nintendo rep, and that's when the conversations happened about, hey, we understand you're using Slippy and that's going to present ramifications. And then I replied with my decision, I believe on November 1st, telling them, hey, I understand where you're coming from, but we're going to go ahead as planned with the event. Cease and desist November 18th. So it didn't take long between that last conversation and the actual C&D.
Now, while Slippy was only being used for the Melee part of the tournament, this does mean that the Smash Ultimate side of the Big House is also canceled. The whole tournament is gone because of the C&D.
Yeah, that's actually that was so sad. Like the 10-year anniversary for Big House. Nintendo obviously, not in any capacity trying to, help, support, just go ham, go in, right? Take it down. Global pandemic, we don't give a shit. We don't give a shit.
Now, if you don't know a lot about Melee, or even if you do, you probably have a lot of questions. Like, why would Nintendo do this? How could they do this? What does this mean for the future of Melee? And why the f is it called Slippy? And I actually have answers to a lot of those questions. First, I should explain the Slippy thing, because it's actually really important. Basically, earlier this year, after quitting his job and working on it for years, a programmer called Fizzy released Slippy, which is a fan mod for Melee that gives it online play.
Yeah, Fizzy is a legend.
When it came out, it was
straight
a
up,
huge deal
straight
because
up.
it basically let competitive Melee exist again in 2020 after all of this year's tournaments were canceled due to COVID.
Melee is very accessible through Slippy, more so than it has been in a long time, which is super ironic because we are in a pandemic right now. But Slippy makes that possible because you don't need to own a CRT TV, which is a product that was discontinued a decade ago. There's certain things that were barriers to entry that are no longer barriers, which is why it's a beautiful breakthrough that happened this year of all years.
So basically, Slippy comes out, and tournaments like the Big House, one of the biggest tournaments in the world, see a chance to get their tournament back and run something online. Now, so far, this has been going on without a hitch. Slippy gives Melee better netcode than Smash Ultimate, which is insane.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
it's a
it
free
already
fan
was
mod
better
for a
prior to
19-year-old
Slippy,
game.
but now it's
not exactly like playing with people in
crazy,
person, but
crazy big of a
pretty good.
difference.
Oh, also, it's called Slippy because it's named after that useless frog from Star Fox. But then, on Thursday, the Big House announced that Nintendo had basically shut them down. And that kickstarted a ton of speculation and anger from the Smash community online. So why would Nintendo do this? Well, from Nintendo's perspective, there are a few reasons. For one, Slippy only worked with emulated copies of Melee. And for most people, that means downloading copies of the game online, which is, let's say, less than legal.
I will not pretend to know the ins and outs of the legality, but
Yeah, I mean, you also you could use your own copy of Melee and get it legally. I'm not an expert on this field, but as far as I understand it, from what other people have told me, so if you have your own copy, you can get it, legally and get it running on Slippy, right? But you also could get it illegally, but that process would be on Nintendo to prove. I could be incorrect on that one, but that's what people that seem knowledgeable in this tend to say. But yeah, I guess don't 100% take my word for it, but that's what seems to be the case. So basically, it would be on Nintendo to prove what person is doing it legally and who is not doing it legally. Which is a massive, massive hassle, of course, and why their case in this hypothetical scenario wouldn't be too strong and not worth their time or resources.
I believe it's more complicated than just that, but the legal department at Nintendo does not see it that way.
Like Harn says, it's more complicated than just emulation is bad. It's perfectly legal to have a digital copy of a game on your computer and play it on an emulator.
Yeah, he went over that now.
Dump the files off the disc. It's just illegal if you decide to distribute those copies to anybody else. Now, Nintendo would argue that just downloading Melee off the internet is illegal, which fair, but then they would have to prove that every copy of Melee used in the Big House was illegally downloaded. And that's really hard to prove, so they just sent this.
Yeah.
But it's also possible that Nintendo doesn't have as much of a problem with the files being illegal as much as they have a problem with Slippy itself. Because Nintendo has a history of opposing fan mods in
Yeah, I mean, they have issues with Slippy, and they have issues with people just like playing their games
which was a mod for Melee that
like in a
smoothed out
dedicated
few
fashion.
very minor problems with the game in order to put everyone on an even playing field. But in an interview with ESPN Esports, then Nintendo of America president Reggie Fils-Aimé said that Nintendo opposes any fan mods to Melee at all. And behind the scenes, a lot of tournaments didn't run UCF because they were afraid of pushback from Nintendo. Look, whichever specific reason Nintendo sent the cease and desist, it is all about Slippy, which feels ridiculous from the outside looking in. Because here's the thing, there have been plenty of tournaments running over the last couple of months that used Slippy and Nintendo had no issues with them, including Smash Summit 10, which was running on the same day that Nintendo sent Big House their cease and desist. So why did Big House get hit and not those other tournaments? Well, the answer is actually kind of scary.
I don't know. All I can share is that I did receive a C&D. We can speculate on that, on why Big House. I haven't really invested mental energy into doing that.
A lot of people have the theory
The
that it's because
Slippy
Nintendo
obviously
sponsored
accelerated
Big
whatever
House in
stance
the
they had
past.
to take on this. If you copy and paste Big House with another event that's just as big happening around the same time, maybe it happens to them. I don't know.
Yeah, no one knows. And that means that anybody could get hit by a cease and desist next. That's going to have a real chilling effect on anyone who wants to run a Melee tournament in the next couple of months. And I'll remind you, that's the only way to run a Melee tournament right now. Whatever the reason is, Nintendo can do this. They have the exclusive right to shut down any broadcast of their game. You might not realize it, but every publisher has that right. Any publisher could step in and say, don't stream our game. Very few exercise that right, but Nintendo actually chose to do it in this case.
I think what's going on here is there's people that Melee TOs talk to from Nintendo who may actually understand where the community is coming from and may empathize with us. But they have to go to somebody higher up, and that person probably has to go to someone in legal. At that point, there's so many degrees of separation in the conversations that the person in charge of making that final decision of, yeah, we're going to C&D this event, likely has absolutely no idea what is going on the factory floor from a TO's perspective or from a player's perspective in the Melee scene.
So to recap, you need Slippy in order to run Melee tournaments. Nintendo sent the Big House a cease and desist for running Slippy. That means that anybody could get hit by a cease and desist for running a Melee tournament.
Yeah, I mean, Genesis is clearly like an event that could be
And
next.
some of you might be saying that all the Smash community has to do is wait it out because things will just go back to normal after COVID. And I'm just not sure that that's the case.
We live in a content-based industry, and without Melee tournaments on Twitch, without VODs on YouTube, without high-stakes competitions to drive narratives in the Melee community, it's going to be hard for that interest to still be there after a year plus of COVID. I believe the cease and desist potentially represents an existential threat to Melee as a competitive scene, and that's why people should care about it.
So, understandably, a lot of people are pissed off about this.
It's been said a million times how out of touch Nintendo is with the world around them, and it should be said a million more times because it is laughable how archaic and primitive and disconnected from reality Nintendo is.
And everyone right now, in a time when we don't know what's going to happen, needs this game. They need that sort of escape. And for this to happen, it's not just wrong, it's evil.
There's a global pandemic going on. What is the alternative? Let
go,
the game
Ludwig.
die? They would love for that to happen.
People actually got so pissed that free Melee was trending.
Yeah, I mean that's like you know, such a like big part of all of this is that it literally is no alternative right now. And even then, Nintendo can't, like, you know, they can't, like, understand that people want, or maybe even need, distractions, stuff that makes them happy in, like, these rough times. There is, like, as Ludwig said, it's like, what's the alternative? There is no alternative. Slippy is the one way of, having Melee tournaments at the moment. But I mean, we know Nintendo, charities, nah, f that. Shut down Melee. Global pandemic, nah, f that. It really sucks. I really think Genesis could be potential, like, in the danger zone, or whatever you want to call it, because they have been sponsored by Nintendo in the past. More so held hostage, is what I tend to call it. Basically, live up to Nintendo's long list of demands and get nothing in return. Besides, not getting shut down, but, I mean, now that happens as well, right?
On Twitter on Friday. The idea is that if enough people spread the word, then maybe Nintendo can be pressured into reversing their decision on Big House, or at least not sending any Melee tournament cease and desist letters in the future.
Going back to the whole decision maker thing, clearly there's decision makers at the top who were out of touch with what the community needed and how the community functions. Hopefully, through social media and general exposure, those people at the top can be reached. That's the only way to potentially drive change.
And there is precedent for Nintendo changing their mind. Back in 2013, Nintendo tried to shut down the Melee tournament at EVO just days before it was supposed to start. Community backlash got Nintendo to change their mind, and the tournament ran without a hitch. So maybe that can happen again this time. But if it doesn't, things could be dire.
If this is a one-off...
Yeah, Sacco, thank you for the fly and 5 months with Prime.
All of the social media movement can convince those decision makers to back off, then I think we can survive this. If it set a precedent and there's multiple C&Ds dropped back-to-back on the next big tournaments that are announced, then I don't think we can survive this.
Look, I want Melee to live as long as possible.
I mean, I understand, especially, like, okay, this video is, like, not, like, a day old or so, but I mean, I think Melee, regardless what happens, will still be in a good position, but of course it will be a massive hit if even more tournaments are, like, shut down. But I mean, the game is sick to the point where, like, I don't think even if Genesis and, like, whatever comes after Genesis as well, even if those get shut down, I don't think Melee would, like, die or anything. It's too many people that love the game, both to play it and watch it. But yeah, it would be super bad. I guess in the coming weeks, so we're gonna see what happens with Genesis. We still, at least I haven't seen anything about, signups for Genesis. So I guess we'll have to wait and see if that one gets a C&D. It was talked about not too long ago that both Genesis and Shine got contacted by Nintendo. But I don't think any information have leaked out what those discussions were talked about, or, like, what happened. Because as we could see in this video earlier, like, Nintendo contacted Rob, right, about Big House, and then it didn't take that long until the C&D happened. So, I mean, Genesis might be fighting for, their existence right now. Pre-voided, thank you for 2 months with Prime.
And I certainly don't want Nintendo to kill it when it might be about to find a huge new audience thanks to online play. But I also don't know what anyone can do but just hope Nintendo listens. Back in 2013, fan outcry got Nintendo to change their mind. Hopefully, this time, they listen again.
I do have hope. I think the Melee scene just refuses to die. We're just too passionate about the game. So I have always held out hope. I think we'll do it again.
Yeah, well, okay. This is the latest entry in fan fixes the garbage netcode of fighting game, company gets mad. Like, it happened to Street Fighter with the netcode patch, right? It happened with I think it's happened, and then fucking Capcom was like patch their game so you couldn't mod it with the netcode patch anymore, which sucked. And then this happens. This guy literally out of whole cloth gives Melee rollback netcode. Again, a game from before that existed. Yeah. And Nintendo steps in and say, actually, f that. Yeah, the secret is that apparently it's not fucking hard. One person can. It took him years, right? I'm sure it's very difficult. I'm sure, but it's like it's one guy working for free. You know what I mean? One guy, he has a Patreon set up, but it's one guy not working for a company, just doing on his own. Imagine how quickly a team of programmers could do this. Call your friend right now.
Fizzy deserves all the support.
I don't know if you still have phones. Do Zoomers still have phones?
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
If you have a phone, then call your friend. If you're in a Discord voice chat with like 1 million of your friends right now because you're waiting for WoW or something, tell them all to sub to the channel if they haven't already. And if they haven't subbed to the channel and they refuse to, then why are they still your friend?
All right. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't really like new stuff per se, but I mean, I still think the video was a well worth watch. You know, a lot of good, important information. And I mean, I think, you know, the train towards Nintendo is something which still should, you know, keep up. Because, I mean, they consistently, you know, pull all this bullshit. So, I think it's good, like, you know, all the time, like, various streamers, YouTubers go over stuff like this. There's always someone new that might not have heard about it beforehand. But yeah, personally, I think, yeah, as I said, Genesis very clearly in the risk zone due to being held hostage in the past. I really hope that doesn't happen. Even though the social media campaign, or whatever you want to call it, after this whole disaster with Big House, even though the decision towards Big House wasn't reversed, hopefully, you know, that massive, you know, negative press Nintendo got, hopefully that makes them back off from Genesis. I mean, if they decide not to cancel Genesis, we will never know for sure if the social media campaign is the reason for it. But I would like to believe that that could be what makes the difference. Like, we had so many things trending for so long in so many different countries as well. So I think it could make a difference, but I would be worried about Genesis personally, but I hope we were loud enough and enough of us to make the difference. But we won't know for a while, I imagine. We won't know for a while. All right, got a PB at least. Got a PB. Ice gotta hope.
That is
Diggins,
fucking
what was
hilarious.
I did every single kill that match.